Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from Washington State, we have Sarah Strickland. Sarah is currently a junior in high school and the lead outreach Raven at Raven Corps, a youth-led activist organization. Raven Corps' current goal is to get dairy out of schools and increase plant-based milk access in over 100,000 schools that participate in the National School Lunch Program. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed. Can you start by telling us more about Raven Corps and how it got started and how long has it been around?
Yeah, of course. So it was started by Claire Howe, who's like our organizer. She's super cool. I love Claire. And it was founded in 2017. And just like you said, we're a collective liberation vegan youth activist organization. And we have like Ravens who are activists who are aged 15 to 22. We actually have a recent implementation of the flight crew, which consists of activists who are like 23 and older. And we have roots in Portland, Oregon, and we have Ravens throughout like the US. So we're like a nationwide organization.
How many people are in Raven Corps?
So in our like Discord server for our community, like for the Ravens, we have around like 60 people. Sometimes activity is kind of like it just depends on the person. So I'd say around 40 to 60 depending on who's active and such. And we also have around 10 people in the flight crew right now, which has just been recently implemented. We have around like 8 leads, I would say. Not all people are focused in outreach, but 8 people in our quote conspiracy, which are basically just the people running the organization and kind of just keeping things organized.
Now, how did you get involved with Raven Corps?
So actually, I was just like on Instagram one day, and like this one like vegan food account that I follow just like posted that there was like an open position for outreach lead Raven, and I was like, oh, that seems kind of cool. So I filled out the form literally in school because I was just like, sure, I'll try it out. Let's go. And the form like honestly had like such a good tone to it. I don't know if that's the right word, but like what I mean by that is there were just a lot of like nice questions that really seemed like they were like at least interested in getting to know you at a more in-depth level. So I just filled that out, did my little interview on Zoom, and they're like, "Hey, you got it." And actually, I didn't check my email, so I thought they'd like reach out to me somewhere else, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, we emailed you. Like, do you still want this?" I was like, "Yeah, of course. I just completely forgot to check my email." So yeah, it kind of just all started on Insta, and I was like, "Nice." So it was like a really easy process and it was super exciting when I got it. Like I was actually super happy. My parents were too because they're like, "Wow, this is great."
Yeah, that sounds like a great thing.
Yeah.
Operation Mind Over Milk. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, of course. So that's basically just our whole focus right now. Primarily, like you said, I'm trying to get big dairy out of schools, specifically public schools, because that's just our main focus at the moment. Pretty much just trying to get soy milk into schools since that can currently be only be achieved by having a parent's note. So we're trying to get that to be more widely accessible. And it's been a little difficult right now because it really depends on like the school district. Like, for instance, I know that in another district, maybe they have it more accessible in their school's food pantry, but others might not. And also the different rules that occur when it's like elementary schoolers versus high schoolers. I know that when I was in elementary school, you had to take the milk if you were getting school lunch, but now in high school, they don't really care as much, and you can just bring your own water or go to the water fountain. So it's been a little bit of a dilemma trying to kind of figure out what exactly to do since there are so many differences between different schools and different grade levels. But that's really our primary focus right now, trying to get big dairy out of schools since a lot of milk just gets wasted. And of course, the other problems with the dairy industry involving, obviously environmental threats and animal rights and workers' rights. There's just so much that goes into it. So that's why we're trying to primarily focus on this now. And it also seems like a more achievable goal because we have seen dairy consumption decreasing over the recent years.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seemed like a pretty feasible place to start.
Now, how is the operation going overall?
Yeah, I think it's been really successful as of now. Like I said, there is a bit of a struggle trying to see what's going on in all these different schools, different grade levels. But last year we partnered up with Oatly and we had a milk giveaway through in a lot of other schools throughout the nation that was like led by our Ravens, of course. And it was super successful. Like they kind of just had stands up at the schools and were like, hey, try this oat milk. And a lot of people seemed to like it. It was really generous of Oatly to like help us out. Like they also, I think they're donating more this year as well because we're trying to get that similar thing going this year again. So it's just really nice.
Now, what are the next steps?
The next steps.
The next steps for Operation Mind Over Milk.
Well, ideally, it would be to make systemic change in the schools. Like having people enjoying oat milk and such is great and will change people personally, I believe. But in order to truly make a large impact, having schools truly understand that dairy milk is just not a feasible option for students anymore and that it's a student's right to have a choice in regards to whether they want dairy milk or water or some other milk alternative is really the next step and where we're trying to go is just making systemic change in order to get dairy truly out of schools instead of just having some individuals choosing maybe oat milk on their personal time, but then they go into school and they just have dairy milk on their tray and then they throw it away and it just leads to more food waste. We're really trying to prevent that and we're trying to just get it out completely, which is a huge goal. So we're trying to get more ravens in and we're talking to policymakers currently and just seeing what we can do in regards to that.
Now, I love how Ravencore calls it lactose normal.
Yeah.
Most people call it lactose intolerant, but I love the way they have coined the phrase lactose normal. Now, one of the things that I read was that 70% of students who receive their lunch through the National School Lunch Program are Black, Indigenous, or people of a global majority. How can these lactose normal students get access to plant-based milks?
Sorry, could you clarify the question a little more? Do you mean like in their personal life or at school?
I mean, at school, right? Because you go to this national school lunch program and the kids are, well, should we just say held hostage in this
Yeah.
in this school and your only choice is milk. And you're looking at this and maybe you want to have something like a milk taste to it. So you want to have a plant-based milk, but they're not allowing that. So how can we get these students to get access to more plant-based milks? What are the options that we have to start the change?
Yeah, right now we're really trying to encourage students to ask their parents for a parents note in order to get soy milk for them like at school because they do have soy milk available, but it's just not out on the trays because it's primarily for individuals that have dairy allergies and like really quote unquote need it, although other people without dairy allergies could need it or could at least want it to a certain degree. So the main goal in which we're trying to get these individuals to have more access to dairy-free alternatives or just non-dairy items in general is really through this parents note that'll essentially say, sorry, my child cannot have this dairy milk, can we have the soy milk alternative please, or something along the lines of that. And then if our goal is that if enough individuals do submit this to their administrators at school, then maybe the school will see that there is more of a change that needs to be done and will potentially supply the soy milk um, on their cafeteria, like in the front lines, so to say,
Hmm.
instead of just having it in the back where it's like more of an inconvenience and it'll be more widespread. But there is some challenges to this in which there are certain schools that don't force high schoolers, for instance, to take dairy milk. And there are some other instances in which maybe the parent would not want to give this note, but currently this is the only feasible option. But we're obviously trying to get it to be more accessible in which students won't have to provide a parent's note.
So is it on a school by school basis? I thought it was the National School Lunch Program.
Right. So it sometimes does seem like it's by school basis because, for instance, I remember I was talking to my friend who lives in Louisiana and he's a high schooler as well, and he was saying how like they are forced to take the milk. But I noticed at my school in Washington, it's the exact opposite. Nobody takes the milk unless they really want it, and it's kind of just there. It's not like students that go to this area, go to the lunch line have to take it at my school, but in Louisiana it's completely different. So there are a lot of differences that we're currently seeing, and although it is standardized, everybody gets the same items. It seems as if some schools are more strict about it than others. Maybe some cafeteria workers have been told that they have to give their students the milk instead. This is something that we're currently trying to do research in because it really does depend maybe on the state or on the school, although it is a standardized national lunch program.
I thought I read that cow's milk is the only beverage that is offered,
Mhm.
and therefore it's the only one that gets reimbursed. If that's the case, what is preventing the government, since this seems to be a government program, from changing that to allow plant-based alternatives?
I mean, probably lots of subsidies going into the dairy industry and such because they could either provide soy milk or just have water more readily available. For some students in other areas, maybe the water is not clean, so they have to choose the dairy alternative. I mean, sorry, the dairy beverage as their only source of like liquids for the day, I
Mm-hmm.
suppose. So there really are ways that they could do this, but it just does not seem to be like the forefront of their mind, probably due to profit and because dairy is just kind of the quote unquote norm right now. I mean, we saw that in a lot of like got milk commercials. I mean, it really isn't like the best beverage for you, but it kind of has been marketed in that way. So maybe even some administrators at the schools are under the false impression that this is the way that students are going to get healthy bones. That's the only way they can get their calcium, even though there are other options. It might just not be as normalized yet.
How can we change such a long-standing and entrenched system as a national school lunch program?
As a national school lunch program, the way that we can really see change is likely through messaging lawmakers and such, calling them, really trying to hone this point and get this point across, and also through student individual change, through trying to get them to submit the parents' note and such. It really is a difficult question to answer due to the fact that a lot of systemic change is difficult for one individual to handle. And what we try to do at the Raven Corps is not to emphasize individual change as much as systemic change is necessary, which is why we discuss these issues with policymakers so often. And also, I mean, we do try to have monthly missions for the Ravens, our 15 to 22-year-old activists, but sometimes it can be difficult. Like, for instance, once again, with the parents' note, some parents might not want to. So it can make maybe some individuals feel helpless if they're not able to do this mission and they're not able to let this go through. So we do have other options, such as calling lawmakers in your area and also discussing this with administrators at your school.
And I noticed that you've worked closely with a coalition of organizations to advance milk equity legislation at the federal level. How is that going, and have you been able to get any response at the federal level?
There have been some responses, and we do have different roles at the core in which our main policy Raven, her name is Shibangi, and I feel as if she does have a lot more information on this, but during our meetings she does discuss this, and it seems as if she's getting a lot of information. I'm not going to say that there is has been 100% progress in which we're making phenomenal changes, but it really is insightful in which she shares what they come back with because she has mentioned that some individuals she has to kind of push back a little harder in order to get a proper response, but she has been getting more information. And that's really how we've learned about the parents' note and such, and also how this changes depending on the school and also on the grade level. That's really where we've gotten a lot of our information from. And there has been some progress that has been made in which we have seen some change, or at least some legislators actually caring about this issue more due to the pushback that she is trying to go through with. But yeah, in general, we've just been getting more information, but there has been some responses. It's just taken a little more effort in order to get that.
Now, as far as Ravencore is concerned, do you have to be vegan in order to be in Ravencore?
We try to emphasize that being vegan isn't like the top priority. Here, obviously, it is definitely preferred, but we understand that some individuals don't have the ability to do that, especially since we are a group of youth-led activists.
Mm.
Some individuals might not have access to these products due to their family situation and perhaps having animal products forced onto them at dinner or lunch or breakfast and such. Therefore, we want to invite anybody that is interested in this, and we understand that being vegan likely comes along with that, but we definitely try to accept anybody that it has, is friendly enough, of course, like as long as they're like a decent person and they're interested in fighting with us, we want them in. That's like our main thing. Like they don't have to be vegan, they don't have to be vegetarian, they just have to be interested and do our monthly missions and be active in our community. That's really all we want.
Is it something that you bring up to the people that are not vegan to show them that this is what's happening, the impregnation of the cows in order to get milk, in case they don't know what happens in order to get the milk or the cheese?
Oh yeah, we definitely do have discussions about the horrors of the dairy industry in our Discord, which is primarily where our community talks the most. And also it's on our website and commonly seen in a lot of our posts. I believe anybody that is in the Raven Court and is like up to date with our information and such and is a part of it, they definitely do understand why they should at least not be partaking in the dairy industry and definitely trying to lead a more plant-based lifestyle. For instance, in addition to like really honing in on like the problems of the dairy industry, we also just have like a whole channel where we can like post plant-based foods and such. And it's just like I feel as if that could also encourage some individuals that have not made the change yet to really go for it.
When you talk about dairy, are you also talking about cheese?
We haven't really made like the exploration into cheese, but of course we're discussing cheese because obviously that's a dairy product. But what we mainly try to do is try to get milk specifically out of schools and not cheese yet. That's definitely what we've been considering for like our next missions if this is successful.
Hmm.
But it seems as if like milk is our first thing just because milk consumption has been going down over the past few years. So that is like the most feasible thing to start with. But then of course people still love cheese and ice cream and such, and that seems to be like the next step in regards to dairy, but we're just starting with milk first in order to get this kind of like loose thread out because a lot of people don't even like normal milk anymore. So yeah.
Transitioning over to your story, are you vegan?
Yep.
How and when did you first transition to being vegan?
I think it was when I was around like 11 or 12, and I I think I was just like on my phone or something, and I remember just I don't know exactly how it happened, but I started following a lot of like animal agriculture accounts, not like pro animal agriculture, just like factory farming footage accounts, and I was like, this is like really interesting and terrible. And then I watched like 2 minutes of Dominion, I clicked off, and I was like, okay, that's something. And then I followed like lots of like vegan food accounts because I was like, this is interesting. I kind of like that. And it was just like a really like gradual like transition, I would say, because I started cutting out like meat completely because I was just like, okay, that's enough. And then dairy started going away as well. And I was like, well, I don't really need that. It's fine. Eggs were like the last to go just for personal reasons. I liked that the most, but I was like, it's just not worth it. So it was really just like I think it was also kind of around quarantine. So I had like a lot more free time and I was like less away from like social spheres. So there wasn't like much of an influence of like my friends at lunch being like, hey, like let's eat this non-vegan thing. It was kind of just like me at home. And I was like looking at my phone all the time and seeing this. And I was like, wow, that's really terrible to say the least. So it was kind of just like a lot of time on social media that actually like really made me go vegan, which I think is funny because social media it, it doesn't really have like the best reputation for understandable reasons. But I think for me personally, it did have a good impact, at least in regards to veganism and such, because it made me choose a lifestyle that is more aligned with my morals.
Now, are you lactose intolerant?
I think I am. I remember eating lots of dairy when I was younger and not feeling well afterwards, so I'm pretty sure I am.
Now, what did your parents think of your change?
I think Like my dad would mainly like get the grocery store products and be like, "Okay, yeah, there's a new vegan thing." Like he didn't really care much about it. And sometimes even now he's like, this seems really interesting, but I don't think I could do it." And my mom like she was kind of hesitant about it. Like sometimes she still sends me articles of like vegans are malnourished, they can't do anything. And I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, mom, that's great. I appreciate your concern. But overall, in comparison to other parents, I've noticed that like they at least buy the products for me and sometimes they even like make me vegan meals and are like, hey, here you go, because I make most of my meals now. So I mean, even like making my own vegan meals was just like a choice that I wanted to make because I wanted to cook more. But they were relatively supportive. Like I wouldn't say they're supportive to the degree in which they're like, "Oh, I want to be vegan now." But I would say that they've been much more kind in comparison to other parents because I've had some other friends that wanted to go vegetarian, but their parents were just hard set on not having them do that or even approach anything similar to it.
Yeah, it must be nice to have your parents at least give you the freedom to make that choice because
For
as you
sure.
said, there are parents who are totally against it. And it must be
Yeah.
challenging for those people to have to struggle with your parents cooking for you and making you food even if you're against it. It would be a difficult time, I would think. So it's pretty great that your parents are open at least to the idea of veganism.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, did you struggle? You mentioned that you liked eggs and you cut that out last. Did you struggle with that?
I wouldn't say it was necessarily a struggle. Like sometimes, like when I was really making that transition, I would try to buy more quote unquote ethical eggs. I would watch like videos from the farm and be like, okay, it's fine, it's okay. And I was like, it just doesn't really like align with my beliefs. It just doesn't really feel right. So I was like, okay, let's just stop buying this. I'm gonna eat my tofu. I'm gonna have my chest egg instead because it was like a little longer of a struggle in regards to that. And also like of course social situations. Like I said, I did like I would say I fully went vegan like when quarantine started. But like before then there was a bit of a struggle because I was and still am that kid that like forgets to pack their lunch and doesn't really care. They're like, hey, like can I have your chips or something? And that's just kind of how I was like back then and still am, of course. But like, sometimes there were like non-vegan snacks that my friends would have and I'd be like, maybe I could snatch that real quick. But since like quarantine started, like there wasn't really the need for that, and I had all my food at home, so I was like, okay, this is a little easier now. And like even now when I'm acting like that, like I always just ask for like vegan snacks or like fruit if anybody has it, because sometimes it is really inconvenient to bring like food in the morning, super annoying. But anyways, like kind of that social setting, like at school, and other people having like let's say somebody brought cupcakes into school or something, it was pretty hard to turn that down before, but now like I feel like there's that sense of like not wanting to like stick to it because it's like I've had like a streak of being vegan, but it's just kind of like I'm used to it now, so it doesn't really bother me as much. Like let's say somebody were to bring cupcakes into the class, I'd be like, okay, I'll pass. Sorry. So yeah, it's just kind of gotten easier to like deny like non-vegan treats and stuff like that because I've gotten used to it. And I don't really miss eggs anymore because like I'm just not used to eating that anymore.
So in a way, it's like a Snapchat streak. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's just like that.
I got my streaks.
So true.
I gotta keep my streaks going.
Oh yeah, my streaks. I have to.
Have you had any issues? Obviously, you said it happened kind of during quarantine. Have you had any issues or challenges when you've gone out with your friends, and have they given you any flack about being vegan?
Actually, sometimes they do, like, but like never in like a mean way, I would say. It's more just like, oh, haha, you can't have this, lol. And it's just like, okay, I don't really care. Like, it never really like hurts my feelings, so to say. Sometimes it can be a little annoying because like one of my friends always mentions that I'm vegan, like in class, and it's like, oh, that's great. Like, it's something I'm ashamed of. It's just like it never fits in the conversation. So I'm just sitting there and it's like, oh yeah, she's vegan, by the way. And it just does not make any sense as to why it was brought up. But I just sit there and I nod. I'm like, Yeah, that's true. And like when like eating lunch with my friends and stuff, like I either like bring my own food or if we go out to a restaurant, I always make sure to look at the menu beforehand. I like being prepared, and especially with being vegan, I need to know if there's like anything I can eat. So like it's never usually a problem like at restaurants, I would say. So I'm really grateful for that. And I don't think anybody in my life has necessarily been mean about it. Sometimes I do get like lots of questions, but I'm more than happy to answer them because it's like I don't want people to remain misinformed and I'm happy to like have them know more about why I chose to be vegan.
What do you think it is about being vegan that other people bring it up? Like you said, your friend brings it up.
Yeah.
What is it? What is it
Hmm.
about it? Do you think that they're interested, they're curious, they're supportive? What is it that they always bring it up?
Honestly, if I were to really think about it, maybe they just think it's funny because it's like out of the norm, quote unquote, or because of like the bad rep that vegans get like in public. Like, for instance, the vegan teacher and people that have been more aggressive online. Potentially that's it. Or maybe they just don't even think about it much. Like in like going back to my friend who always mentions it. I don't even know if thoughts like go into his head when he says it. Maybe he just thinks it's funny now, so he just likes to go with it. But maybe the reason why other people might tend to make fun of vegans, like perhaps is maybe because they do feel uncomfortable about the animal agriculture industry and they don't really know what to do about it. Maybe they know what occurs in it and they just feel uncomfortable, perhaps. Like there I don't really have many theories going into it because like I don't understand why somebody would because it's just like another thing that somebody chooses to do. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe just thinking that it's a little funny or feeling a little uncomfortable around it.
Now, did you notice any changes when you changed to being vegan, say with your skin or something?
I didn't notice any dramatic changes, but when I was younger, I did eat a lot of junk food, so I became a lot more, I think I would say I became a lot more healthy in comparison to that because which isn't like saying a lot because I was like eating McDonald's every day and it was like really bad. But now, I mean, I think my bowel movements are a lot more healthy. And I think my skin has gotten a little better, if I were to say, but I did transition when I was like super young. So I don't really remember a lot of like what came before that in regards to like how I felt. I was kind of just like living as a blob, just kind of going through my everyday life at elementary school. So yeah, I feel like if I were like an older vegan, I'd transition when I was maybe like 20 or so, maybe I'd have a little more to say about that. But I think I do feel a lot better. I remember at some stage in my vegan transition journey, I didn't really like eat as much as I should have on accident. So I kind of realized that and I did more research. I was like, okay. And then like I actually like knew how to like properly like cook my meals and make it balanced and like satiating. So after that point, I think like things just went uphill from there because I actually was eating properly.
Now, what is it about activism that makes you so passionate?
I think it's really the fact that like you there's a possibility to make a change and it just like I'm not going to say it only feels like you're doing good because obviously you are making a difference, but sometimes when you see all these terrible things happening in the world, it just feels like it can make you feel like a little hopeless and even helpless at times. So pursuing activism and even being a part of an organization, if that's what suits your fancy, really does feel great because A, you're with like-minded people, and B, once again, you're making a change. Even if it isn't as significant as laws being passed, it's still something. And I feel as if everybody were to sit around and feel as if they can never make a change, then really nothing would get done. I don't like the idea of like solely putting the focus on individual change because sometimes that's not what we need. Obviously, we do need systemic change, but at the same time, individual change can go far, and I feel as if that can give people hope. Like, and it does make a significant change if enough people come together.
Sounds like you're really passionate.
Yeah, no, I really like activism. I'm super happy to like actually start because for a while I wanted to and I just didn't know how to get into it. And like the Raven Corps was like a really great place to start and I'm just like super excited to be a part of it.
Sounds like a great organization.
Yeah, it's super nice. And like everybody in it is super welcoming as well. Like I was super nervous going into it, but then I just was not worried at all after like the first day because nobody is like everybody's just super welcoming. It's nice. I like it.
What is one habit, hack, or tip, or another way that keeps you on track with your plant based diet?
Definitely like remembering why I'm doing it. Like for instance, when I was younger and somebody would have like a cupcaking class, it would be kind of difficult to be like, okay, well I kind of want that right now, but then just like remembering why I'm vegan and why I chose this lifestyle, really trying to get back to like my core values is kind of just like, okay, I'll pass on that. It's whatever, something like that. And also, I would say that like a huge thing is just like veganizing your favorite foods. I'm half Chinese and like my whole thing was just like not wanting to like quote give up my culture, but obviously you don't have to. A lot of Chinese food is already vegan and like the dishes that aren't like you could easily replace them with like seitan, tofu, mushrooms, etc. So just kind of realizing that there are super easy like ways to veganize your favorite dishes is honestly kind of fun because it kind of like inspired me to really like get in the kitchen and like continue cooking and find new recipes. And it just makes me feel like a mad scientist sometimes. I really like it. I don't know. Like, yeah, those two things really just like trying to like remember your values and also just remembering that a lot of things can be easily veganized. And if they're not, then like have fun like looking up a recipe because I really like cooking. So yeah.
So, speaking of recipes and cooking, do you have a cookbook, a book, or a documentary that you recommend to people that might be transitioning to a plant based diet?
I think for some people, Dominion might be too much. That's what got me, like I said previously. But I know for some people, it might just feel a little too much, or maybe they're desensitized to violent stuff like that, where it just doesn't hit the same, maybe for some people. But for the cookbook, I really like the Korean vegan. I think she's super awesome. Like as a person, I watch a lot of her videos, and I finally got her cookbook, and I really like the stories that go along with it, and just like the recipes itself. Obviously, like you can't have good stories and terrible recipes. She's an amazing cook, and like I really like everything that just goes into it. And the pictures are great. Not gonna lie, the pictures are awesome. So yeah, I really like the Korean Vegans Cookbook and Dominion, depending on the person. I always try to warn people that it's like really gruesome and I don't want people to like go into it thinking that it's gonna be like something that's tame when obviously it's not. So yeah.
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you were vegan and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
Before I was vegan, one word that I think I could use to like describe myself is maybe feeling a little inconsistent, perhaps, because I really love animals and everything about them, but then I was also eating them, and it just did not really make much sense, and obviously does not make much sense now. So I think that's one word that I could use to describe myself then, and maybe now I think I would say that like maybe I feel like satisfied with my vegan journey. Like I'm really proud of myself for like continuing with this. Like although I don't think it's like an incredible thing that like requires a lot of effort and such, I still think that it's something that it's like a small thing that I can be proud of and also in regards to like activism and really getting that going. I think all those things are something that I feel really satisfied with in comparison and just like being consistent with my morals now, it feels nice.
So, inconsistent and satisfied are you two?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. What is the best way for people to support you, follow you on the web or social media?
It's Ploopy67. It's a funny name, I know, but I made it when I was like 11 and I've just stuck with it till now. So yeah.
What is the best way for people to follow Ravencore on the web or social media?
Oh, just at the Raven Core. Core is spelled with like kind of similar to corpse, but without the E. It's not the Raven Corpse, but yeah, the Raven Core.
Okay, thank you again, Sarah, for being on Plant Your Seed.
Thank you.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.